Hey folks, this is Cindy. Thanks so much for stopping by. I am back with another card making video. This is for the Winterhaven Stamp of Approval collection. Today we're going to be taking a look at some No Line Copic Coloring. These products are going to be available in the Catherine Pooler shop. In case you missed it when the collection was released, now is your chance to get them. So today I'm going to be focusing on the 'Tis the Season stamp set. Now this is a solid image stamp set. I generally don't like to stamp in colored inks. I always figure out a way to color, to do some sort of no line coloring, and this stamp set is perfect. Now, I just pointed out those two little images right there, just in case you don't know, because there was some confusion earlier. That is actually a candle, just so you know. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I have some Neenah Solar White cardstock in my Misty, and I'm going to stamp this poinsettia with the Catherine Pooler It's a Girl ink. And I chose this ink because I know that I'm going to be using reds for my poinsettia, and this will be plenty light enough that I can still see what I need to do, but I can color over it and it won't mix my inks. Now I've cut out a pretty simple mask for that. I have that covered up, and now I'm just going to take an acrylic block with some Garden Party ink, and I'm just going to stamp those that leaf a couple times. This seemed to me a little bit easier than trying to mount it on my Misty. And then I just have to keep moving it. And then also I wanted to show you that you don't actually need a Misty stamping tool in order to do a card like this. You can totally use an acrylic block. I generally prefer the Misty, and I'll show you why here in just a moment, but I just wanted you to see that you don't need it. It's totally easy to do without it. So the main focus that I want to keep in mind when I'm stamping the images on this card is I want to have a nice balance of all of my images. So for the majority of these, I'm going to stamp them 3 times, and I'm going to try to spread them out so everything looks balanced in the end. There's a couple of these that aren't going to be in 3s. I think I only got them on there twice. That's fine. Don't ever stress over that kind of thing. Just do the best that you can. Now, as you can see, I have several images loaded up on my Misty, and this is why I'm using it. So I can stamp multiple images at once with both colors of inks, and then it saves me a whole bunch of time. By nature, no line coloring, whether it's watercoloring or Copic coloring, takes a little bit longer anyways because you don't have those solid outlines to kind of keep you in place. So you have to kind of take it a little bit slower. So I do try to minimize the amount of time I've spent actually building the card as opposed to finishing it up, if that makes any sense. So now I have all of my images on there. Everything is stamped. Now we can start to get into the coloring. And I'm only going to show you a small portion of each thing that I do because it's all the same. Another thing to keep in mind, or another really good trick to keep in mind, is to keep your technique as simple as possible. Try not to vary it too much because then you have so much less to keep track of. Now I'm taking my red Copics and I'm literally just doing flicking motions. They're, for the most part, to begin with, short flicking motions. I'm not going too heavy on my R39 there. That is my darkest color, because while I want to convey that I have some shadow and depth in this, I don't want to go too crazy with it because otherwise then my poinsettia is going to start looking like a big blob. So I started with my lightest. I immediately went in with my darkest, which was the R39. Now I'm at my second mid-tone. That's the R27. Now I'm back at an R24. And then I'm going to finish that off with the R22. That is my lightest. And I'm going to concentrate that right there in the middle. So those petals look like they're curving. And that's what I want to go for because that's going to make it's going to make it look like I have the most depth and the most dimension without having any reinforcing outlines on my image. It's so easy, just flicking motions, following the shape of the petal. Now I'm going to do the berries, and I'm starting with the R22 again, and I'm just adding a small C shape on each of those. And then I'm going to go immediately over that with my darkest color. Again, that was the R39. And I'm going to follow that same exact shape. I'm trying to stay fairly conservative with my lines because, again, we want to convey that we have berries, not blobs. So as you can see, I'm just keeping that line really thin, and I'm trying to offset when those berries that are the closest together. So you see that there's 2 berries, not one big one. And by doing that, I'm kind of varying the angle of my little C shape there. That was the R24. I think I skipped the 27. And now I'm back at the R22, and that's it. So I'm just going to leave those super, super simple. And I want as much light on those as possible to also help reinforce that they are a round shape. So now I have all of those done. And then I'm going to do some No Line Copic coloring on these stems. But here's what to keep in mind. Because they're a thinner line and you don't want to make them overly thick, just use the tip of your marker. And honestly, you could do maybe 1 or 2 colors. Start with your lightest color, take one of your mid colors, and just put those in the corners where the stem branches out, and then go back over it with a light one, and it would look great. I used all of my colors, and I'll actually have those linked in my blog post as well in the description below, because I don't remember off the top of my head. But that's a good trick. And then you're still getting that coloring in there so everything matches, but you're not making your lines too thick. Now I'm going in with a couple of these little pine boughs here, and this will look a little overwhelming because you don't actually have really a legitimate shape, but here's the trick. Just flicking motions. Keep your marker straight up and down and just flick color in there. Start with your a line up the center and then flick out from the center towards the edges. And then when you get to some of those edges, kind of draw maybe just kind of a little dash and then bring it back towards the center a little bit. So you're going to see when this is done that it has those varying shades of color through the whole thing, from the outside in and the inside out. And then it'll still give you the idea that there's this round pine bough tucked in with this poinsettia. Now, I didn't do a very good job on stamping this one. I probably should have brought it in closer to the poinsettia so you didn't see as much stem, but whatever. Nobody's ever going to notice it, I promise. This G29 is my darkest color, and I'm being fairly conservative with that. I don't want a whole lot in there because otherwise it won't look right. Now, as you can see, those almost look round and full like they should. Now, these ones are probably the easiest out of all of them. I'm just reinforcing that stem up the middle, and then where that upside down teardrop shape meets that stem, I'm just doing a little tiny flicking motions. I'm trying to leave as much highlight as I possibly can because I want those tips when it's all colored in to really pop, and you'll see what I'm talking about as soon as I'm done. Now I'm going in with my darkest color. And then as soon as I'm done with that, I'm going to start working my way back to my lightest color. This is another one. I think I used 4 colors. You could get away with 3. You could get away with 2 and nobody would ever notice. Especially if you're a little uncomfortable with Copic color or doing any no line coloring in general. This is a really good approach. Just keep your color simple and your approach simple. I am adding one more color here because I just want those tips to have the highlight to them. And then I'm going to go back in with my lightest color, but I'm not blending from the center out very much. I'm mostly starting from the tip towards the center because I don't want to overblend that. All right, so now we are going in on our last one, and I'm sorry if you couldn't see any of those. I was not paying attention. I'm sorry. So I'm starting with my lightest color, and here's the trick with this one. I want the center of this one to have the most depth. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen like a holly leaf in real life, but they have like a really deep crease down the center, and I was trying to reinforce that. So I basically drew a line down the center, and then where the edges of each leaf curve, I just drew a line diagonally towards that, if that makes any sense. Now you can see it now that I've gone on with my darker color. And I'm just going to work my way back to my lightest, doing the same exact thing with all of the colors, but I'm trying to give it some variation, so I'm not going over the top of each line. I'm kind of going in the middle And then when it's done, you can see the different color variations, but you can also see that it was completely covered in. And then with my lightest color there, I'm starting from the tips, working my way towards the center so I don't overblend on those. All right, I finished this off with a Uniball Signo white gel pen on the berries, a Spectrum Noir clear overlay pen on all of the highlights as well as all of the berries. I stamped a sentiment from the Here We Come A-Caroling stamp set that's also a part of the Winterhaven collection, and I used the Hill die from the Winterhaven die set to create that faux border, and that's it. I'm going to call it a day. Do be sure to head over to the Catherine Pooler blog for more details and links, as well as subscribe to my YouTube channel, and don't forget to give me a thumbs up. I sure hope you enjoyed my card today. Thanks again so much for stopping by. Until next time.